So I'm Gregory Poilasne, I'm the CEO and founder of Nuvve. So first, let me ask you what you see on this picture, obviously outside of this black and green logo at the top and some white writing at the bottom. So what we see here, looks like some type of industrial vehicles. We can see maybe in the back something that looks like a charging station. So the idea here is that, in 1996, when Professor Willard Kempton from the University of Delaware would imagine such a situation, which are electric vehicles, right, in a industrial environment that are used for a certain purpose during the day, he thought that when they would be in that situation, they would actually become integral part of the grid. And that's how the V2G idea was born. So a long time ago, our vehicle to grid. Within Nuvve, we prefer calling it Grid Integrated Vehicle, or GIV. And this is actually the first fleet that has been signing for grid integrated vehicle services in Denmark, which means that right now when those vehicles are in that situation, they're actually helping to balance the grid because they have a bidirectional capability where they can flow energy in and out of the vehicle. And each of these vehicles today is actually generating $1,400 per car per year on a single service. So in 1996, when Willard started with this idea, he was projecting that, looking at renewable energy sources such as wind and solar are inherently volatile. Many of you probably have solar on your roof. As soon as there's a cloud coming over, the production nearly stops. And the cloud goes away, the production starts again. So that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is the fact that each of those vehicles here is 10 kilowatts, which is more than most likely what you use on average at your house. And those are heavy loads, and they are very volatile as well, because at some point you need to run for an errand, and you're going to be unplugging your car right away, and all of a sudden this 10 kilowatt load is going away. So the concept of V2G basically is to create a bridge between the pool of energy used for transportation and the electric energy, which, by the way, combined, those two are generating, I think, about 62% of all the CO2 that are generating every day. So, this issue of volatility, if we forward to today, if you look at countries such as Denmark and Germany, on a regular basis, these countries are actually generating 50, 80, sometimes 110% of their needs through renewables. 110%, then what do you do with those 10% that are over the top, right? Then if you look in California, right, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the duck curve, which basically the idea is to look at traditional generation. And then, when our solar and our roofs are generating energy, we need to make room for that, which means that traditional generation is being reduced. And then at 6 p.m., the sun goes down, we go back home, we turn on our AC, we park our electric car, and we have this huge load that comes to the grid. Usually we like when things are happening faster. This is actually fast. This is happening faster than what everybody was expecting. That means the dip is getting deeper and the ramp up is getting larger. We are getting to 13 gigawatts in 3 hours. Now that's the equivalent of 13 nuclear reactors. But that's also the equivalent of 1.3 million electric cars, which, at the scale of California is not unreasonable. So you can see that cars are both part of the problem, but if you can actually manage it properly, they're also part of the solution. And that's really, the visionary aspect of Willard Kempton when he developed this solution many years ago. Another interesting story is to look at what's happening in Norway today. Norway is about 5 million people. It's barely bigger than the San Diego area. It's a fairly large country, especially compared to the population, but it's also, it's got mountains, ice on the mountains, the ice melts, filling the reservoirs, and then this water can be used to do hydro generation. It's basically an unlimited source and green source of energy, of electric energy that they have. This is also a wealthy country, so they've been embracing electric vehicles. Last January, they sold of all the vehicles sold in Norway, 37% were either purely electric or plug-in hybrid. They have 100,000 electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid in Norway. I think the largest one right now is China. They have 650,000. It's the country that's got 300 times the population of Norway. So, I mean, the rate of penetration is extremely interesting. And especially for us, when we look at what's happening over there, basically that distribution system is saturated. It's a wealthy country, so they have the money to upgrade it, and they know it's going to cost them billions of dollars. But we can't do that all across the Western world. It's going to be impossible to sustain this. E.ON and EDF have looked at some numbers, and they are looking at potentially 200 billion euros that would be required to integrate renewable energy sources and electric vehicles over the next 7 to 10 years. So the ratepayers, we don't want to pay for that. I mean, and it becomes a hurdle basically for the adoption of electric vehicles, and therefore using very smart solutions to integrate both renewable energy sources and electric vehicles are very, very important. And so when Willett Kempton started in work in 1996, he was very visionary about also the position where the platform would need to be. It's not just about charging electric vehicles, it's really a virtual power plant that is using electric vehicles as an asset to participate into markets that are on their own basically generating revenue. So the way our platform works, which is this bridge between the two areas, is basically on the one hand to look at the needs from the grids, at multiple levels, either it's the transmission, the distribution, or behind the meter, and then to dispatch those needs onto the assets that are connected to the grid. It can be cars, it could be charging stations on their own. They can sometimes perform services, even if there is no car plugged, and it can also be distributed storage. And then it's dispatching this on a second-by-second basis. And then in parallel of that, it's also doing a forecast about the resources that are going to be available, the need from the grids on a second-by-second, a few minutes, a few hours, a couple of days ahead, so that we can also use this in order to bid in the markets in which we are participating. So, you can ask yourself, okay, what are the benefits for the user, right? I mean, the first thing is, hey, you can be proud because you're helping integrating electric vehicles and renewable energy sources, but yeah, sometimes it's not enough, right? So what's happening is, actually when you use the vehicles to participate in markets, we are actually generating some revenue, and we are sharing that revenue with the car owners. And basically, the consumer, the passive consumer, is becoming a prosumer. And that's a very interesting concept, and I think I would need a few more hours to go through that, so I'm going to skip that. But this is really the transition that we are looking at here. What I really want you to remember is when you see an electric car, and especially when it's parked and plugged, it's not just a car. It becomes a grid asset that can be used to help integrated renewable energy sources, reducing the CO2 generations, and it's helping making a better world for us today, but also for our children. Thank you very much.